Hey guys, what's up? In the previous videos, we've learned how to work with procedural lighting here in Enscape. So basically, we explored the native tools of SketchUp and Enscape, which is a very simple way to work with lighting. Nevertheless, we achieved some very interesting results. However, there are other ways to work with lights, which can lead to more photorealistic results. So here in Enscape, we can work with a method called image-based lighting, or IBL, that allows us to use photographs that can help us with the lighting process and hence produce some more interesting and photorealistic images. We can use this method to work with interior and exterior scenes. And there are a couple of tricks that I would like to show you that can help us reach a very interesting result as well. And to work with IBL, we have to explore HDRI images, which are the high dynamic range images that can support a lot of information of color and tones of gray and white. So when we use this system, we can extract very interesting color tones from the photographs that we are using, and therefore our images can in the end be more photorealistic comparing to the procedural ones. And to use this method based in HDRI images, there are basically two conditions. First, the images have to be, of course, HDRI, which is a kind of extension. And this is an image that is produced from a sequence of photographs taken with different exposures. This sequence of photographs will be able to capture different tones of the landscape, and then they can be transformed into one basic image, which will have a very interesting appearance. And this kind of image allows us to see a lot of details in its bright and dark areas. So we will have a lot of information that can be transformed into lighting. So maybe you are used to work with HDRI images captured in cell phones, but to use this kind of image for lighting purposes, it would be better to download in a computer graphics website because it has to be done in a professional way. The other condition to use the HDRI method is that the image must be a spherical image or a 360-degree image. This means that the image will be stretched all around our space in SketchUp, producing a sphere that contains all the color of the photograph. These colors will be then projected to the center of our model, producing the light that we expect. Okay, so now that we understand the basics of HDRI, let's make some very simple tests here in this Villa Savoye model to understand how it works within Enscape. Of course, in the next videos, we will take a more careful look in specific times of the day. But for now, let's see how the principles work here in a very quick way. So first of all, I will start Enscape. Okay, I'll increase a little bit my window. Okay, I will also synchronize my views. And once again, I will start by applying the material override effect. So I'll click here in the visual settings. I'll move this window here. Okay, so I'll click here in white so I can see the colors produced by the lights. And to work with HDRI, we have to explore the Sky tab, which controls the background. And in the procedural way of working, we could play around with clouds. We could also choose a specific background, which is offered by Enscape. But to use this IBL mode, we have to change here the source to Skybox. And now we can load our spherical HDRI image down here, and it will replace the existing procedural background. But before loading any image, it's important to show you that we can explore different websites to create our own HDRI library. So I opened here a website called Polyhaven, which is one that I use a lot. And here you can see that we can download models, textures, and HDRIs. So I'll click here to browse a few of them. And you can see that we have different categories that we can explore. And what's very interesting here is that we have a very good preview that shows us the 360-degree image here. And underneath we have the effect that is produced by the image in a 3D sphere. So for example, you can notice that if we have a very cloudy image, probably the result will be a very gray light. And if we have a lot of blue in this HDRI, it will produce a very blue skylight with different effects in our scene. So my suggestion is to explore this website, and there are a couple of other ones that I would also recommend. And you can download your own HDRI images that can be suitable for your needs. And I have already downloaded some of them, so you can explore the files that I've provided. So I will return to SketchUp, and here in my visual settings Sky tab, I will click in Load Skybox from File. And now you can take a look at the HDR that I've provided. And I'll basically test any one of those. So I'll click here in this first one, click Open. And we can see that the first result is a bit strange, so we have to configure some settings here. So once again, here in the visual settings, it's very important to activate this first option, which is called brightest point as sun direction, which means that now the HDRI is in fact producing the sunlight. So now, if we drag this rotation slider to the right, we are basically rotating the spherical image all around our scene. And we can check that the sunlight direction now is changing, and we are basically rotating the sun around our model, because now the effect of the sunlight is actually the effect of the picture of the sun that exists in the photograph. So we can see that we have very interesting results by rotating our HDRI image. And since we've selected a 360-degree image that was taken probably in the noon period, we have this very bright sun and very dark shadows that are very typical of this time. And aside from rotating the image, we can also change this brightness value, which basically affects the energy of the image. So if we drag this slider to the right, the image will get brighter. You can see that even the shadows now are brighter. And if we move this to the opposite side, we get more contrast with more dark shadows, and the background will become very dark. So of course, we can reach a very interesting image by changing these parameters, but we can always try different HDRIs to see which one looks better for us. So if we click here in our image, we can now choose another one to compare. And it's important to say that if you would like to see a better preview of the images, you can always use Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Bridge, that you'll have a nice thumbnail and you can select better the images that you like. But here I'll basically choose a random one. So for example, I'll choose this one called Industrial. Now click Open. And now we can see that we have a very different image with a very orange light coming from the sun. We can rotate our HDRI to see how it looks. And we have a very beautiful sunset in this photograph. We can change the brightness to get more contrast or more saturation. And here you can see that we have a typical image simulating sunset, because the HDRI was probably a photograph that was taken in this period of the day. I'm gonna make one last test. So I'll click here. I'll choose now this third image here. And now you can see that we have a very different result from the previous ones. The image has a lot of gray color, and probably because the photograph was taken in a cloudy atmosphere and probably in the evening. And we can also rotate to see how it looks like. And here we can see that there is a sun that probably is rising, and we can change the brightness so we can make this sun weaker or stronger to get more contrast in the image. And using this image we can reach some very interesting results as well, with a different mood from the previous ones. So basically, you can notice that whenever we change the image, we get different results with different colors being projected from the sphere to our model based on the sun, on the sky, and in the elements that exist in the photograph that we used. And it's also important to notice that when we work with HDR, we get very interesting reflections. So if you take a look at the glasses of the Villa Savoye model, you will notice that we have the reflection of the trees of our HDR image and also the sky. So whenever we change the HDR, we are also affecting the reflections in our reflective materials, which also helps us to produce very photorealistic results. Okay, so now that we've learned how to use HDRI in Enscape, in the next videos, let's make some specific simulations in exterior and interior scenes.